What would you do if your husband opened DNA results at the dinner table, looked at you once, and walked out without a word? That was the night my world flipped upside down. And I still swear it wasn't supposed to go this far. My name is Isolde Crane. I am 34, and on the outside, my life looks stable, ordinary, even enviable to people who thought we had it all figured out. My husband Ethan Crane is 36, a careful accountant who always built his choices around structure and responsibility, which to most people made him look steady, but to me often felt suffocating. We had been married for 6 years and were raising our daughter Clara Ara, who just turned 5, and from the outside, it seemed like a picture-perfect family with predictable routines and safe traditions. I worked as an office administrator in a medical building. Nothing glamorous, but enough to keep me busy and give me stories to tell when friends asked how work was going. To them, Ethan seemed dull, always cautious, too measured. While I felt like the spirited one who kept the spark alive, and I liked that image because it gave me space to excuse certain things. What I did not admit openly was how restless I felt, how much I craved something less ordinary. Which is why when Ethan's younger brother Marcus Hale leaned closer in ways that blurred boundaries, I did not stop it. Marcus was only a year younger than Ethan, but his energy was reckless, unfiltered, and he carried himself with a confidence Ethan never seemed to match in public or private moments. When people laughed at Marcus's jokes and admired his charm, I convinced myself I was simply drawn to the liveless missing in my marriage. Not doing something wrong, but only finding balance. My best friend, Mara Jensen, who was 33, always told me not to settle for being invisible in my own house, and her encouragement made me feel like I was justified in reaching for attention elsewhere. On the other side, Ethan's mother, Helen Crane, at 62, always favored him and watched me with suspicion, and I knew she would take any excuse to say I had failed as a wife. My own brother Darren tried to defend me when family conversations turned sharp. Yet even he could not always hide his doubts when things between Ethan and me started to unravel. What began as secret moments of attention soon turned into jokes whispered among friends. Remarks that made Ethan look small and me look like the one who could not be contained. I thought I was winning control of the narrative by shaping Ethan as too weak or too serious. Yet in truth, I was only laying the foundation for the scene where everything finally collapsed. It all started to break during an ordinary evening at home when I made what I believed was a harmless laugh in front of family and friends about how our daughter Clara Ara seemed to look, more like Marcus than Ethan. Everyone chuckled lightly, and I leaned into it thinking it was witty, acting as if I'd said something playful when in reality I knew it carried weight. Ethan's face went blank as though he had swallowed something bitter, and I brushed it off by telling everyone he was just too sensitive. I convinced myself it was nothing more than a joke, even as Helen's glare burned through me, silently, accusing me of saying the unthinkable. Darren tried to deflect, but the room shifted, and Ethan excused himself, only to return, holding a sealed envelope, heavy in his hand, like a quiet threat. I laughed again to cover my nerves, not realizing that moment would define everything that followed. That envelope sat on the table between us while everyone pretended not to notice, but I could feel my pulse in my throat with every second of silence. I told myself Ethan would never actually open it, that he was too proper to make a scene in front of others. So I kept smiling and carried the conversation like nothing was wrong. Inside, I was terrified he might really be planning something serious. But I buried that fear under layers of confidence and denial. I thought if I kept framing him as uptight and insecure, people would see me as the one in control. Mira later reminded me that men like Ethan rarely follow through, and I let myself believe her words because they made me feel safe. Still, I could not ignore how Ethan avoided my eyes that entire night, almost as if he had already made a decision that I had not yet caught up to. The next morning, Ethan left unusually early without a word, and I told myself it was just his way of sulking like always, because he never liked confrontation when emotions ran high. I explained to Clara that Daddy had gone to work early, masking my unease with a bright tone that even I did not believe. When Mira called, I told her Ethan was exaggerating again, making a mountain out of a small remark, and she laughed, telling me I should not let him guilt me. That reassurance was like a lifeline, because it let me frame the problem as his inability to take a joke. Yet deep down, I sensed something shifting, a distance heavier than before, a silence with intent behind it. I tried to convince myself Ethan would eventually break and come back to me, apologizing for overreacting. But in the stillness of our house, I began to wonder if this time was different. Days passed, and Ethan did not return to his usual warmth. Instead, he moved like a ghost around the house, speaking only when Clara asked him something, and never directing a word toward me. I tried to provoke a reaction by telling family he was being cold and unfair, painting him as cruel while I played the wounded wife. Helen refused to believe me and told anyone who listened that Ethan was protecting himself from betrayal, which made me furious because she had no proof. Darren defended me half-heartedly, insisting people should not take jokes so seriously, though even he sounded unconvinced. I leaned on Marcus for distraction, letting his easy charm blur the discomfort building at home. Still, Ethan's silence became unbearable. Not like before when he cooled off, but like something final was already in motion. And I hated how powerless that made me feel. When Ethan finally broke the silence, it was not with words to me, but with papers left on the counter, neatly stacked with a lawyer's letterhead, staring up like a verdict. My breath caught, but I told myself he was bluffing, that no man who truly loved his family would take such cold steps. I insisted to Mira that he was just trying to scare me, trying to make me admit guilt I did not feel. But the dates, signatures, and official stamps told a different story. One of custody plans and frozen accounts that could not be laughed away. Helen praised Ethan for finally acting like a man of dignity while I seethed, claiming he was tearing our family apart on purpose. Darren avoided choosing sides, though I could see doubt in his eyes. For the first time, I realized Ethan's silence had never been weakness. It had been preparation. The court hearings moved faster than I expected. Each session stripping away the ground I thought was mine. Each piece of evidence presented with Ethan's calm precision. He had recordings of my laughter at the restaurant, files of my messages, even witness statements that painted me as careless and cruel. I tried to claim it was character assassination, telling anyone who listened that Ethan was obsessed with revenge. But the judge saw stability in him and recklessness in me.